We have seen two of the biggest upsets in UFC history already. And of course, I'm talking about Hamzat Chimaev versus Sean Strickland and Ilya Topuria versus Justin Gaethje more recently. And both of these fights, I believe, are perfect examples of the importance of a game plan, which is effective and bespoke to a fighter's opponent. Because a good game plan can overcome technical deficiencies or a gap in some kind of some kind of skill or athleticism. Um, and Justin Gaethje and Sean Strickland both executed perfect game plans to come out the victors in their respective fights, whilst Hamzat and Ilya both displayed the opposite. They displayed linear game planning, minimal, kind of not very coherent and effective game plan, which is bespoke to Gaethje and Strickland. They were both far too aggressive, far too overconfident, and they were coming in. Kamzat were coming in with his grappling and just speeding in as he does, and Ilya as well with his boxing, just coming in hell to leather, uh, but coming in very tunnel visioned. That this is right. They're so confident in their ability, and they should rightfully so because they have both finished incredibly capable opponents. Both finished opponents better with a more illustrious careers, better wins, better resumes than the guys that they lost to. But they lost to the guys they lost to for a reason. And when you look at these fights, they really highlight like I say, they really highlight the importance of a game plan. And two of the best examples of fighters in UFC history who were tremendous at employing a game plan and sticking to it, and having a contingency plan as well if things didn't go as intended, adjusting mid-fight, staying composed, staying measured. Two of the best examples are GSP and John Jones. And I know some people are going to consider this to be like feeding into the idea of like MMA maths, and that MMA maths is not reliable because UFC can basically be like a game of rock paper scissors a lot of the time. One fighter will beat another fighter will beat. It's hard to predict. Um, but these are two of the biggest upsets in UFC history, undoubtedly. We can't say, oh, these guys were fraud checked. They weren't fraud checked. They already beat former champions and current champions. Hamzat Chimaev got a 10-8 round against Kamaru Usman, who is one of the most dominant welterweight champions of all time. And Ilya Topuria obviously knocked out Charles Oliveira, Volkanovski, and Holloway. Neither of them were fraud checked. They already had tremendous wins. They already established themselves in their divisions. But what this is a case of is overconfidence and a lack of a proper game plan. Because the thing is, you have to prepare specifically for an opponent because the punches are coming at different angles. It's different trajectory of the punches. The footwork's different. Where you expect somebody to be, they might not be. If you prepare for an opponent by just by sparring somebody who's just very approximately somewhat like them, just they have like a small resemblance to their style, that doesn't really prepare you for the way they throw punches, their timing, their pacing, their footwork, their positioning, all these things. There needs to be a really good consideration given to this. John Jones does this so well. He adapts and he caters his game plan to each specific opponent. He knows the areas to attack. He even beats them at their own game because he prepares like that and he takes them by surprise. The mindset as well is so important. If you go into a fight and you're thinking, I'm definitely getting the finish in round one, and you've got absolute confidence in that, like Ilya did, and then he panicked when he realized, oh, right. And this is exactly what Justin said in the build up to this fight. He said, "Oh, he was saying when it goes to the second round, when it goes to the third round, it's like, what then? What then?" It's like it's not finished when you expected it to finish, and now what's happening in Ilya's mind? He's beginning to doubt himself. He's not prepared for this outcome, and he's taken aback. He's taken by surprise, and he wasn't able to adapt to this situation. He came out with these skirmishes, looking very worse for wear. He was completely battered up, and he didn't look defeated. Like Gaethje said, he was always still dangerous, but his morale was definitely not like it was at the beginning of the fight. He began to doubt himself. He was too tunnel visioned. He was so focused on getting that knockout. He was just he was fiending for that knockout, and he was throwing caution to the wind. He was slacking with his defense. His defense was not like it was in other fights. But as other people remarked as well, in all fairness, Josh Emmett has a lot more of a linear style than Justin Gaethje. Justin Gaethje has better timing. He's got longer reach. He's got a better use of the jab, leg kicks, uppercuts. But yeah, all these things, and complete credit to get Justin Gaethje, and Sean Strickland as well, because Sean Strickland even said he was saying that the way he prepared for the fight was he got used to he acclimatized to adversity. He got used to he was training in these adverse positions. He was training. He was basically living in these uncomfortable, unfavorable positions, and that gets him used to not panicking. Because when you've been there in training before, over and over and over again, and then it happens in the fight, you're more prepared because you've been there before. But if you're not prepared for that adversity, if you're just training and you're used to knocking people out or just putting people on the back foot who are approximately like the guy that you're going to be fighting, you're not really preparing for the guy you're going to be fighting, because that guy happens to be Justin Gaethje or Sean Strickland, who are both very, very tough fighters with a different mindset than Khamzat and Ilya. Khamzat and Ilya have this complete confidence in their abilities, and they should, because they are incredible. We should not say they were fraud checked. We should not now say that they're overrated. Ilya's boxing is very crisp, but one of the things with that is being very having a very like traditional boxing style, but where it's the techniques is all very it's all very locked into one kind of style. And as McGregor remarked after the fight happened, he looked a bit flat-footed. His game's not complete. He looked flat-footed. He was in positions where he could get hit, so something's going wrong. But even for boxing, it's not like, oh, just because he had a boxing style that would do great in boxing but didn't do great in MMA. No, the way he was fighting against Gaethje, he would not have success in boxing either. He was not staying behind his jab. He was not using feints. He was not being measured. He was not being composed. He was not picking his shots well. He was not being effective. Even that sequence where he's going to the body, he looked quite messy. He looked panicked. It did not look good. Um, so it's just such a good example of poor game planning. Um, and I'd like to give an example of great game planning. And people, understand that styles make fights and everything, but I want to give the example. And so people say this is a bad thing to give it. No, it's like Khabib versus Gaethje is a great example of a fighter staying composed and measured and having a good game plan. Because nobody's going to argue that in terms of pure boxing, pure power, accuracy, um, even kind of defense, we've never seen Khabib shoulder roll like Ilya has. We never see him bob and weave, and we never see, he wouldn't Khabib, we never see Khabib knock out Charles Oliveira like that, or Max Holloway or Volkanovski, and we have to remember how incredibly impressive that is, and just look at what the truth is, because Khabib didn't have that same boxing, and yeah, he won by grappling, but he needed the striking, and every fight starts on the feet. He needed the striking to set that up, and what Khabib did was so good. If you've ever tried this in sparring, if you've never tried this in sparring, it's such a great thing to do. Almost like you're it's almost like you're pretending to have the same intensity as your opponent. It's that kind of like that feinting. Anderson Silva did it great. He would like dart from side to side and like move his hands whilst coming in and coming from angles, and it's so hard to. People just get flustered and they don't know what to do, and they panic, and they expend more energy, and it's kind of Khabib did it in a more subtle way. But what Khabib did was he weaponized pressure, and he weaponized pressure. He had great ring generalship. He stayed measured and composed. He kind of stayed behind. He did stay behind his jab. He carefully selected his shots, and he moved. He walked Gaethje down. He stayed defensively responsible. He stayed measured. He didn't get into a firefight with Gaethje, but at the same time he wasn't backing up against it. He was pushing the action. But Gaethje was panicking. Gaethje, because Khabib was obviously exploiting Gaethje's grappling weakness and making him fear for the takedown, which opened up the striking, made Gaethje get sloppy, and it was perfectly executed. It barely looked like Khabib broke a sweat, and I think this it just highlights the importance of like positioning, and it's all these other things other than just speed, power, accuracy. Because like in the pocket, like I mean, Ilya is just he's an absolute killer, and honestly, 90%, like most of the roster wouldn't have survived. Uh, Ilya's onslaught. Like the fact that Gaethje survived is remarkable. It's an incredible display of heart and resilience, because when you get hit by those body shots, it's not like getting hit by you can kind of sometimes you can, unless you just get your light shut out, you can kind of tough through the head shots more than the body shots, but the body shots just shut you down. There's nothing you can really do about it. So the fact that he was able to survive that is incredible, and all credit to Ilya as well. He showed a great toughness. Like we should not look at Ilya as like a quitter. He literally could barely see out of both eyes. But yeah, it's just so important to have a game plan. GSP did it so well. He adapted to adversity, like when he got head kicked by Carlos Condit. And, GSP has his losses as well. He lost to Matt Serra. That was a big upset. I don't think that was as big an upset as Gaethje versus Topuria, though, in my mind. And Gaethje's 39. As far as I'm aware, I'm pretty sure Matt Serra was still like kind of like in his prime pretty much, but that was an upset. And Ilya Topuria can obviously come back, but what he needs to do and what Hamzat need to do is they need to be more measured and more composed and have a specific game plan. Have better fight IQ, be more selective, because they've got incredible skills, incredible athleticism, incredible technique, incredible fundamentals, but they need a better game plan, because they will get beat by guys who are just better prepared for their style. They've looked at exactly what they do, with their tendencies, everything, the way somebody moves, all these things. All these things have to be given such careful consideration. John Jones, again, he's so good at it. He's just so good at it. Of course, he lost to Dominic Reyes, and that is his only loss on his record. And yeah, they've got the steroid allegations as well. But they can't. You know what they can't do? They can't do what he did against DC in their second fight. John Jones was able to stay composed enough to not just rush at DC, but actually take the opportunity to trip him, to disorientate him, and confuse him further, which opened up the finish. It's just such a level of composure that's just so impressive, and that's why he's a cut above the rest. That's why he was technically never beaten by Dominic Reyes on points, but Yeah, it's very impressive. And I've got a good example as well with the technique and the technique versus strategy kind of thing. Because you need both, especially in the current state of MMA. You need both. You need very crisp technique and also great strategy. But when you look at tennis, for example, there's guys who are like a couple hundred seeds even below the very best in the ATP ranking, and the very best in the ATP ranking, they don't hit the ball much harder or much faster, if any at all. It's not about how fast or how hard they're hitting. It's the shot placement, it's the composure, it's the experience, it's the strategy, it's the way they're using their energy. And credit to Nate Diaz as well. In terms of pure boxing technique, for example, Ilya cleans out Nate Diaz. He's so much better. His hip rotation, his shots, the way he moves the way he loads up the shots. It's a lot better than Nate Diaz. But you know what Nate Diaz does really well is he conserves his energy well, and he gets out of the way of shot. He had underrated defense because he'd get hit by a lot of big shots. He'd get hit by shots, but it wasn't like he'd get hit by a shot that he didn't see coming a lot of the time. A lot of the time he was prepared to take it. He was just taking it, and he'd be measured and he'd take his time. And Nate Diaz quite often clowns on a lot of these newer fighters, and sometimes it gets a bit annoying and it's a bit irritating. But sometimes he has a point. The experience that he's had, like to not be finished, like the killers that he's went through, and the way that he's been able to come out of those bouts having not been finished is very impressive. And it's not just through toughness. Yeah, there's toughness, and toughness is very important. But there's an understanding of the danger and the energy give and take. And it's an important consideration. But yeah, Ilya Taporia and Hamzat Chimaev are incredibly talented fighters, and it will serve them very well to go back to the drawing board, discuss with their coaches, and when they're preparing for their next opponents, to employ a very bespoke game plan so that they're prepared for if things don't go as intended, or just to be prepared for the exact style, how their opponent moves, the trajectory of the shots, because the trajectory of the shots, like Gaethje against Taporia, it looked like Taporia wasn't really expecting it. Yeah, sure, in the later rounds, especially as the fight went on, his vision was significantly impaired. But besides that, anyway, it didn't look like he was all that prepared for where the shots were coming from. He was getting hit a lot. And Sean Strickland comes at Chimaev the same. He rushes in way too much. They both need a clear game plan, and that will take their game from here all the way up, because they are both very talented fighters, but they need to make those improvements.